Good morning. I am Darth Vader, and today I will be delivering the children's sermon. So gather around, children, so that you can learn. Surprise! It's not really Darth Vader. It's me. It's Mr. Matt. I hope you're doing okay. I just thought I'd have a little fun. Did you recognize me? Did you know it was going to be me? Did you? I was inspired by our Jesus story today, so I thought I'd wear a little mask to get us started. See, in our gospel story, we learn about two men who are walking from Jerusalem to a town called Emmaus. And it's a decent-sized walk. And these two men are leaving, and they've been talking about everything that's been going on in Jerusalem. They talk about how Jesus had ridden in, and people thought he was the Messiah. They talked about the fact that Jesus was arrested, and then he was killed on the cross. But they're also talking about this idea that they've heard some of the disciples saying that they've seen Jesus, that he's back after he was dead, that he's still alive and still with them. So they're talking about all this as they're on this road, and a third traveler comes up with them, and he listens to them for a while, and then he starts asking them questions and saying, well, what do you think it means? And at first they're surprised that the third traveler hasn't heard anything about what's gone on. So they start filling him in on all the events that happen, and as they're walking, the third traveler starts telling them more and more things and starts explaining what scriptures mean and how what Jesus did might have been according to all the prophecies. And so they have this great conversation, and it lasts all afternoon while they're traveling back. And finally, they get to their destination, and one of the men says to the third traveler, says, won't you come in? Won't you eat with us before you continue on your journey? And the man says yes. And so they go in and they clean up from the road and they sit down to have a meal together. And the third traveler asks if it would be okay if he could break the bread and say the blessing. And so he does. So he breaks the bread and then he says the blessing. And right after he says that blessing, all of a sudden the two men recognize this isn't just a regular traveler. This third person that they've been with all day, it's Jesus. They didn't recognize him, but after he says the prayer, they sure know who it is. And as soon as they recognize him, Jesus is there, and then he vanishes, and he's gone. Well, the two men are excited, and they're flabbergasted, and they don't know what to do, but they say, well, we've got to go back to Jerusalem. We've got to find the disciples, and we have to tell them that we've seen Jesus too. Now, I really like this story. I really like the idea that Jesus is still out there in the world teaching and helping and encouraging people, but that we just have a hard time recognizing him. It's like Jesus is wearing a little bit of a mask or a disguise so that we can't see him very clearly. We're just like those two men on the road. We're walking along, we're living our lives, we're doing our things, and people come and go, but we just don't recognize Jesus when he walks into our life. I also like the idea that it's up to us, to try to find Jesus, to take off that mask, to see through the disguise, that it's up to us to look deeper and to see where Jesus is. Now, I've never managed to unmask Jesus. I've never managed to catch him and say, ha, there he is. I win the game. But I sure have seen a lot of Jesus's footprints in my life. I've seen his fingerprints on my life. And in fact, there was one time when I was very, very sad that I actually felt like Jesus came up behind me and gave me a hug. But when I turned, he wasn't there. Now, maybe if you look, you will find Jesus hiding in your life too. Maybe Jesus is disguised today as someone who's working at the grocery store. Maybe tomorrow Jesus will be disguised as a nurse who's working at the hospital trying to help all of the people who have been sick lately. You never know where you're going to find Jesus, but I can tell you one thing. I know for sure that you'll never find him if you never look for him. So this week, take a look where you are. Look around in your neighborhood. Do you see Jesus, or at least the signs of Jesus at work in your life? Do you see his fingerprints or footprints around that show you how much God loves you? That show you how much he needs for us to love one another? Work hard, look hard, and pray hard. And I bet you will be able to find Jesus so that just like those two men on the road to Emmaus, you'll be surprised one day to find out that Jesus has been with you the whole journey. That's all for now. Until we're back together, remember how much God loves you. Remember that your church family loves you, and know how much I miss seeing you all. Bye-bye for now, and bye from Darth.